There is a pond up the road from the house I grew up in. We call it Peanut Pond because it looks like one. The pond and the surrounding land belonged to a person who didn't live on Crosset Hill. The land was owned by someone who lived and worked somewhere else. So, for my brother and I, our friends and our neighbors, the pond was ours. Not private like no trespassing, not public like anyone could be there whenever they wanted to. The pond was for people who lived on Crosset Hill Road and their distinguished guests. Peanut Pond was an okay place to swim, a better pond for wading, a great place for hunting crayfish. The bottom of the pond is pale clay, and there are few rocks large enough for the crayfish to hide under. When the sun comes out, the bottom of the pond is clear, so long as you hunt carefully. Rushing into the water stirs up the clay, and the water becomes cloudy. There is little hope of catching anything that way. Catching a crayfish requires patience and attention. It asks that the hunter walk in wide, concentric arcs and approach the crayfish from behind. They swim backwards, after all, but their sensitivity to movement in the water is quite good. I met Nat on the school bus. Bus number 11. It was the first school bus I ever rode. Bus 11 brought kindergartners to kindergarten at the grade school. You were either a morning kid or an afternoon kid. I was in the afternoon. I spent the mornings at a daycare not far from my house called the Children's Space. I remember stepping onto Bus 11 and looking down the aisle at a few handfuls of children I had never seen before. I sat in a row about 2/3 to the back. Nat was sitting right behind me. He stuck his head over the back of the seat and made a face at me. We sneered and joked at one another, our heads resting against the window panes. He was brash and impulsive and kind of dirty around his ears and under his fingernails. He was restless and crude. In the weeks that followed that first bus ride, we became good friends. Nat has a younger brother, Owen, the same age as my younger brother, Hayden. During the summer, the four of us played pretend for hours almost every afternoon. At our house, we played as explorers. At their house, we played soldier. There came a weekend when Hayden and I sprung the idea to walk up the road, up Crosset Hill to play in the sun at Peanut Pond. Nat and Owen had earned that privilege. Towels, ball caps, sandals. Mom packed a bag of snacks and sunscreen. It was late July or August. The grass was dry and the breeze was warm. We set our stuff down. Nat goes stomping into the water. He reaches his waist and dives underneath. A great disturbance. He must not understand at all how to hunt for crayfish. But Nat was a hunter, come to find out. His dad hunted deer, and he wanted to be just like his dad. Nat's dad was also a soldier. He served in the Marine Corps for a number of years. Nat was a soldier too. He was playful and rough and dangerous. His canine teeth were sharp. He loved to wrestle and make noise, but he also understood patience, the stakeout. I proposed we look for crayfish. Nat owned the hunt. We filled a plastic yellow bucket with a layer of clay, sticks and a few rocks, 4 or 5 crayfish, and just watched them for a while. They snapped at one another and backed themselves up against the rocks. I spent a week in Southern California with my roommates this past March. We drove from San Diego to Joshua Tree National Park, about 3 hours east. Just another 15 minutes past Joshua Tree is a place called 29 Palms, the Marine Corps Air-Ground Combat Center. Nat is stationed there. Nat's a soldier now. We talked over the phone on the way up. He said he was excited to see me. We never did meet that day. There is a lot to see in that park. To suggest we take a tangent, such as driving to a military base to meet up with an old friend, seemed like a selfish thing to do, and it would have taken us away from the time spent with one another at the park. A few thousand miles by plane, a few hundred by car, a few handfuls on foot, all to be separated from one another by about 15 minutes. I didn't have the courage to tell him we wouldn't make it.